me start over. How's it going, you guys? I got another great guest here for you today. My man Josh Nilson here from Dark Horse Tactical. Nilson, right?
Yep.
Perfect. So as you guys know, here at Tapered Viking, we always talk about prepare, lead, and protect. So I brought my boy down here to talk to us about the leading, well actually the preparing and the protecting. And what we could do as men to make sure our family is set up and safe when we're not there, when we are there, things like that. Brother, how are you?
Yeah, good.
Thank you, man. Thank you
Great
for stopping
finally
in.
get down here and do this.
Really, I appreciate that. And for those who don't know, his gun store is like 2 miles from my barbershop and the podcast studio. So this is how we met.
Yeah.
Tell them a little bit about yourself, man. What makes you qualified to talk to us about protection?
Yeah,
and
so
guns?
pretty much started when I was young. I actually didn't grow up here down in Vegas.
Okay.
I actually grew up in the northern Utah area.
Oh, okay.
And up there, the community I grew up in was more rural. It wasn't a whole lot of urban stuff going on.
There's a lot of preppers and stuff down there, right?
Preppers, that's more Idaho.
Oh, okay.
But,
Right.
yeah. But like I grew up, there was more horses on the road than cars, kind of a deal. My first job was, shooting birds in farmers' fields that's actually how I got into shooting. Was
interesting.
The farmers there with the cornfields and everything, they would hire out, young kids, whatever, with BB guns over the summer.
Yeah,
and you go in there and they had
trigger.
Yeah, they had
kids.
little pest birds that would eat the crops and whatever, and we go out there and shoot the birds and turn them in for money and get like a nickel and go up to the Ace Hardware. Back when you could ride your bike more than a mile away from your house and
safely,
and safely do that. Yeah, and go up to the Ace Hardware and buy some penny candies and more BBs and go back to work.
Wasn't it such a simpler time?
It was
back then.
Yeah.
So when did you start? How did you open this shop? Actually, can you get into that?
So I actually moved here in 2007.
Okay.
I was hired by the Henderson Police Department. Did 15 years with them.
Wow.
8 of those were on the SWAT team. That's
news.
Yeah.
To me. That's cool.
Yeah. So I had a bunch of different jobs within the SWAT team. Was a sniper for the vast majority of it. So precision, long range type stuff, entry. Got into the team leader stuff a little bit towards the end, but did that for 15 years. During that time, I actually started Dark Horse Tactical.
The brand or the shop?
The brand, the company itself, actually back in 2015, and I kind of fell into it, to be honest with you. We had a guy, it was our former K-9 sergeant. He wanted to start teaching Nevada CCW classes.
Okay.
And he needed some guys to kind of help teach with him, and knowing my background, in the SWAT team, I went through just about every certification you could possibly go to on the law enforcement side to become qualified as a firearms instructor. So FBI schools, different types of shooting academies and whatnot. So knowing my background, he's like, hey, do you want to come and do this with me? I've already started a company. We're good. I was like, yeah, why not? make a couple extra bucks on the side, feed my gun addiction.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah.
We all got one of those.
So we went through all the training for that. It's heavily NRA based. To get certified through the county, through Clark County, to get certified as an instructor. And right around that time, his wife got very, very sick. And so he came to us and he said, hey, I'm so sorry. I gotta handle family business. And it was like, no, do your thing, and unfortunately she ended up passing.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, she was a really great lady. But during that time, I've always kind of had that entrepreneurial mindset or spirit, kind of just going back to that whole being a child and going out and doing anything, making money and doing that kind of stuff. So I was like, well, I've got these ideas and I've always kind of wanted to own my own company. Why don't I just start my own company? I've got all the certifications.
Just do it.
Just do it, right? Just pull the trigger and do it, yeah, right? So started Dark Horse Tactical in March of 2015 and just started out doing, the CCW stuff. Teaching.
So just the teaching. No sales, no
just straight teaching, because I was still employed by the Henderson Police Department, so I had a very fine line of what I could and could not do off duty. Okay. Because we have certain policies and whatnot.
That's fair.
Yeah. And then in 2017, we had some stuff going on within the department where we had some equipment that was not performing like it should.
Okay.
And it was very frustrating because I was in a leadership position at that point of.
But may I ask what kind of equipment? What do you mean? Equipment?
So it was a sniper rifle.
Okay, so weapons equipment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So
like
it was weapon related. Yeah.
Okay.
And
like, y'all police officers got a lot of different equipment.
Right. Yeah. And it just wasn't performing, and we could not get a resolution to that. And I finally was sitting down one day, and I was like, if I was going to build a precision rifle that I would trust to take and protect my community with, or give my guys, because I was in charge of 3 other snipers at the time, what would I make?
Yeah.
And so then that was the light bulb of like,
Bing, that's the
all right,
entrepreneurial mindset.
let's get into manufacturing.
Wow.
So we immediately flipped into that. We still did training a little bit on the side, but really got into the manufacturing side. And it wasn't until I actually got out of the team in about 2019-ish, springtime, went back to patrol. Times had changed. We're getting into right around George Floyd, the riots.
They
COVID,
really tightened down on the police.
Everything. Like we'd already kind of gone through with the Ferguson, what went down in Ferguson.
Yeah.
And so they were already kind of really tight. And then George Floyd and COVID and the riots. And I started looking around. I was like, you know what am I doing? I'm not 40 yet, so I'm still a young guy,
a young buck.
But things are going on in law enforcement, both on internally and externally. I mean, we're very fortunate here in Henderson. We have a great citizen community here that really supports the police department.
That is very true about Henderson.
But at the same time, nationally and national trends start going the way they go, and it was like I can either keep doing something and not be happy, and run the risk of making a decision that 10 years ago would have been totally fine, but now we're under such scrutiny that I run the risk of, even though I may be obeying the law as a police officer, that decision could wind me up being disciplined, being fired. God forbid I get into a shooting, even if it's a justified shooting, now it's pulled under scrutiny. Do I want to subject my family to that? And I just made the decision one day. I was like, you know what? It's time to move on. Dark Horse was starting to evolve more. I was getting more involved. I hate saying I'm a fuddy-duddy, like an old fuddy-duddy, but like when it comes to,
what's a fuddy-duddy? I've never heard that term before.
Right? Like I don't know. Like social media was not my thing.
Okay.
Right? Like I'm a private individual for the most part, and I just wasn't about social media. So, but knowing that in order to build a brand and put yourself that you got to do social media, it's so vital.
That's what I've been working on towards, and
and it's not easy. So we start getting that. We start gaining traction in both on the training side, because we were teaching both, law-abiding citizens and police officers as well. Like I was traveling all over the country, teaching other, law enforcement guys and teaching civilians here. It was like, okay, we've got it. I've got enough of a basis here that I can step away from this 15-year career and take that leap of faith. And I'll tell you what, it was probably one of the scariest things I've ever done. Dude. To say, okay, I'm going to give up a guaranteed paycheck every 2 weeks.
Let me backtrack. When you left, were you actively SWAT when you left, or what position were you in?
No, I had gone back to patrol. I had gone back to patrol.
You had gone back to patrol.
Yeah, so I've been in patrol for just under 2 years when I made the decision to leave.
Interesting. If you would have stayed in SWAT, do you think you would have made that same decision? What may I ask, what brought you from SWAT back to patrol?
A lot of internal stuff.
Okay.
There was some egos involved and some.
There always.
Yeah, it's funny. We talk about you hear about the thin blue line and it's very strong, but sometimes cops are our own worst enemies, right? You got a bunch of alpha males, especially on a SWAT team, and everybody's trying to do their thing, and sometimes things get said or things taken out of context or whatever, and I ended up going back to patrol.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And then from there, that is actually very inspirational. I think that is crazy. And how has this been going for you?
So it's been going really good. So when I finally made the decision to leave, I was like, okay, I can't operate Dark Horse out of my house anymore. I mean, because that's technically what I was doing.
Yeah.
The business was home based, and a lot of my manufacturing was very small scale. So I was able to do it. I live on a larger piece of property here in Henderson, so I had like a shop and everything. So I wasn't like tinkering in my garage.
Yeah.
But it was like, if I'm going to scale, I've got to expand. And there's a very old gun shop for the folks that are from here and know this area really well. The old Center Mass gun shop that's been since 2000.
Yeah, they built one of my Bushmasters back out there.
Yeah.
I had some stuff I was modding out, and they did it over there.
Yeah. So I actually had the owner of the property itself was a client of mine. He would come in and get high-end firearms or whatever. I was basically his gun broker.
Okay. Yeah.
And it became a running joke for several years of like, hey, one day you should just buy my building. And one day I called him up. I was like, hey, are you still serious about that? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So we were able to work it out. And so we purchased the property of June of last year. And because it had sat vacant for 7 years.
It was vacant.
It was
that
vacant
long?
for 7 years. Yeah. The city, had we not bought it in June, the very following year, so this year, the city was going to condemn it and demolish it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got in right in time.
Yeah. Right in the nick of time.
So then let me get this straight. So now at Dark Horse Tactical, by the way, fire name.
No, for sure.
Badass name. So now you offer the training there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shooting range.
Yep.
It's a gun store.
Yep.
I assume FFL certified,
Yep.
like a buy guns from
Yeah.
online, ship it to you, pick it up.
Yeah.
You guys do these type of build outs.
Yep. So we're the manufacturer there.
Manufacturers as well.
Yep.
Custom work. So all the things.
All the
Anything
things.
guns.
Pretty much anything you can think of, minus like engraving. We're getting there, but we're not
Working
into
there?
engraving yet.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so the shop itself, we were very fortunate that even though it had sat vacant and the outside looked really rough, the inside had survived.
Yeah, and there's still a
decently.
shooting range, like a few
And
lanes
in the
in there,
shooting
right?
range, so we have 4 lanes in there. It is shorter. It's only 7 yards, but that works out perfectly for us because that's the max distance you shoot during a CCW course
Yeah, that's
anyway.
perfect.
So we were able. That was kind of the deal we made with it. Not the deal we made with the city, but that was one of our contingencies. Was I went to the city and I said, "Hey, look, I'm interested in purchasing this building, but since this building has been closed, you built an entire home development next door."
Mm-hmm.
It used to not be surrounded by anything, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big deal to have a gun store on
It
the
was-
edge of town.
Yeah.
But now it's surrounded by houses, right? So I was like, hey, I'm not even going to purchase this building if you're not going to let me reopen the range.
Mm-hmm.
That was like that was the
That
only
was
reason.
your-
Other
yeah.
than that, I'd just go find a brand new building somewhere else and operate out of there. But that range was important because there's only 2 indoor ranges in the city of Henderson, and I own one of them.
This one, where's the other one?
This one, Green Valley Range, over off of
Oh,
American
that's
Pacific
considered
and
Henderson.
Gibson.
Yeah.
So talk to them. They're like, you'll have to go through the permitting process like everybody else, but you're not going to get an automatic no. So I was like, okay. So we moved forward with the building, and then that was in June. It took us probably 6 months to get through all the renovations, getting it up to where I wanted it. Got that done, and then ironically, going through the pandemic and being on the front line in law enforcement and having to, while most people are chilling at their house, we're out there with everybody,
Yeah, doing
right?
all the, yeah.
Never caught COVID, never nothing. I retired in September. I went to a trade show in November, and I got COVID.
You got it? Oh, my
and I got it
goodness.
then, and it messed me up. Like,
Really?
I all the time it's like, it's like the flu and whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what variant I got,
But it hit you.
but it kicked my
I
ass.
actually got it, and it was, I'm not going to lie to you, it was a nice time for me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get no symptoms, but I got a vacation from work, essentially,
there you
like a
go.
forced vacation, and I was chilling.
Yeah.
But anyways, so back to, I actually have a question when it
Go
comes to COVID
Yeah.
and when it comes to owning a gun shop.
Okay.
I know a lot of different gun shops in town, but I've never actually spoken to an owner personally.
Right.
How do the laws and all the government mandates and all the, whenever like a new politician comes in, whenever elections, how does that affect or directly affect an owner of a gun shop?
So, and it really depends on what they're trying to push, right? So we saw when Governor Sisolak shut down basically the entire state, right?
Mm-hmm.
He shut down everything. Well, fortunately, there were enough people that were willing to stand up and be like, hey, look, by shutting down, for instance, gun stores, you're inhibiting people's Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms.
Yeah.
Same thing with the churches. You can't keep people from worship, right? It's literally written in our Bill of Rights, in our Constitution. So in that aspect, he was forced to allow gun shops to become essential businesses and to be open. But I didn't have the shop at that point.
But I'm asking more or less like when they start talking about gun bans, when they start talking about magazine bans, when they start, those are ammo, when it skyrockets or when it drops. How what's affecting that actually? Like in what way do you guys get? If they're talking about if they're talking about like banning a lower or
Right,
certain
we're
things.
going through that right now. Literally,
That's my point.
Yeah,
So that's why
literally.
I'm asking. So now you have the context.
Yeah, so and it depends on if it's going on the federal level or the state level, because we're seeing both right now. Right now, luckily, Nevada traditionally has been a pro-Second Amendment state for the most part. You're seeing a lot of the stuff come down federally, but like in other states, like right now, Oregon, they just passed a huge magazine ban that's now being, fought by some of the people up there. So it really depends on at what level it's going on. Obviously, with the political party that's in charge of our country right now, they're going to support any state that, clamps down on people's gun rights, right? So it really depends on at what level that's going on, because at the federal level, you have
what level does it affect you? Where you have to now go and adjust or pull something off your shelf?
It can be both. It can be both the state level and the federal level. So what I'm getting at is if the state institutes, hey, we're going to do a magazine ban, or anything over 10 rounds gets banned like they had in California, and now they're going to have in Oregon, the state mandates that. So there's actually legislation in the state that says you are prohibited from selling this
now
product.
You have to pull all your stuff off the shelf and just sit on that product?
Well, I mean, you could sell it to other states, states where they're not regulated.
Wow.
Like the flip side of that, you have a bunch of people in California that are always coming into town and they're trying to buy certain things. And there's some things you can sell, but a lot of the stuff you can't because it's not legal to possess in California. So we're fortunate enough we actually have like an online presence as well, so you can purchase our products through our website. So if somebody from another state, say in Nevada they ban high capacity magazines, right? But right next door, Arizona doesn't have that ban. Somebody from Arizona can purchase it through the website or something like that. So you're not necessarily like having to destroy product per se. Now, that being said, the ATF's got their heckles up over these pistol braces, these support braces, right? Yeah. So literally we learned that they submitted their final report to the White House for consideration to ban pistol braces. That was 2 days ago.
Oh my goodness.
Based on this president and his, willingness to completely, obliterate people's Second Amendment rights, there's a very good chance that he's going to approve the ATF's recommendation to ban pistol braces. Now, can they do it? Technically, the ATF has no powers to enact something like that. It has to be an act of Congress.
Okay.
Unfortunately, through the years, we've seen where ATF has come out with regulations or have worded things a certain way, and it's just been adopted as people are like, okay, well, that makes sense. We'll just kind of go along with it, even though there's really no, unless it's enacted by Congress and signed off by the President of the United States, it's not a law. It's a guidance, it's a recommendation, it's a suggestion. Unfortunately, they've gotten so emboldened over the last, several decades of constantly just getting away with eking away at all those things. Now they think that they can just make stuff up. I mean, they're instantly going to, for lack of a better term, they're going to turn law-abiding citizens into felons if they don't give up these pistol braces, right?
Yeah, that's what I was trying. That was my next question. I'm glad you asked. What happens then if they do and we have them?
So, and it's comical the way they do it, because they know deep down they don't have the power to do what they're doing, but they will push. It's like that whole throw a frog in a boiling pot of water, he'll jump right out. But if you put him in go and just slowly turn it up, next thing you know, you got cooked frog, right? So they're doing the same concept to the American people of saying, okay, well, we're thinking about banning these pistol braces because we think that they're this, that, or the other. But we'll tell you what, instead of making you an overnight felon because, everybody automatically starts screaming like, hey, what's going on, we'll give you amnesty. Amnesty for what? There's no law that's been passed. What are you giving me amnesty from? But they use these buzzwords to scare people into compliance. Into submission, exactly. So that's what they're doing here is they, like, all right, we're going to come down with this ban, but we'll give you a grace period to either turn in your stuff, which is confiscation, government confiscation,
buybacks,
or amnesty or whatever. And it's truly comical because, fortunately, being in law enforcement for as long as I was, and particularly being in SWAT, I actually know a lot of ATF agents, even before opening my business.
You've already been engaged.
Excuse me, yeah. And just knowing them from working, and I often have conversations with them because I'll want to make sure that my business is constantly following the regulations so I don't get shut down or thrown in prison, right?
Of course.
So I brought it up one day. I was like, hey, man, one of my guys that I know a little bit better, I was like, hey, what's going on with this pistol brace thing? He's like, well, nothing's, this is back probably in the summertime when they really started making a stink about it.
But now, 2 days ago.
Right. I was like, hey, what is going on with this? And he's like, honestly, it's going to be a lot of saber rattling. They'll try to push it. If they think they can push it, they will. Obviously, the elections hadn't happened, so they didn't know how that was going to go. Obviously, that went a lot in their favor, more so than it should have. But that being said, he's like, look, we don't even have the manpower to enforce any rule we were to put in place in the first place. And secondly, between you and I, and this is him talking to me, between you and I have 3 of those pistol braces in my own gun collection. We don't want to,
That's what I'm saying.
The vast majority of, and I don't want to speak for the entire ATF because I think that they should not exist, period. But a lot of them are good dudes. But unfortunately, we've seen in the past that you can have good dudes following the wrong leadership
and the wrong ideology
and it doesn't make them any better than the ideology they're following. So it's unfortunate. It's a constant navigating, not treading water, but navigating rough waters and trying to maintain compliance. Like I said, here in Nevada, we've been very fortunate that we're still a very pro Second Amendment state.
Thank goodness.
That can always change in a heartbeat. It only takes one election to change the entire course of an entire state. We see that right now in Arizona.
This is exactly why I want to do stuff like this and spread these type of messages, because we want to keep the talk about firearms on the good side and get it away from the bad side.
Yeah.
Interesting. But let's go back to the training.
Okay.
But still within the COVID realm. We know how many people bought guns during COVID.
A lot.
It's crazy. I get the heart was there. The intent, the right intent was there. They want to protect their families, and I can't hate on them for that. Right. But I'm not sure, and I don't know if you know, but maybe you could tell me. Do a lot of those people, do you know if they did the proper methods, or they just go get it and just store it and think? And if not, just tell me what is the next step for someone who just had purchased a firearm and it's just sitting in their up in their top shelf.
Yeah.
What do they do with it?
So you saw the vast majority of that actually occurring, where people that may have been adverse to firearms before, never owned them, maybe they were scared of them, maybe they were anti-Second Amendment to begin with, all of a sudden they're taking a look around saying, hey, things are going downhill quick. I'm scared. I want a gun. They go on their first-time buyers, and that's another thing that can be unfortunate in the firearms industry. Is sometimes you'll have gun shops that are just there to make money.
They're just selling no matter what.
They're just selling no matter what. They don't care. They'll sell a giant .357 revolver to a 95-pound, blonde girl that doesn't know any different. No offense to blonde girls.
No offense over here.
Right.
Yeah, we're good.
And they'll just sell them a gun because it's a sell to them, right? They don't take that time, and that's what kind of sets us apart. It does set us apart at Dark Horse Tactical, is the time and care that we put into everybody that walks through the door, because we don't want those people purchasing not only the wrong firearm, but purchasing a firearm for the wrong reasons. Because just purchasing straight out of fear is already shouldn't disqualify anybody per se, but it might make the situation even more dangerous for them, because if they purchase that firearm and then they don't take any steps to train with that firearm, become more familiar with it, now it's going to do more harm than good, especially if they attempt to use it to protect themselves and the person that is, trying to hurt them takes it away from them, turns around and uses it on them.
Or the people end up hurting someone else that they didn't mean to hurt.
Exactly. It always comes down to a lack of understanding, and a lack of training. But we did see that spike during the COVID times and during the riots, where everybody's looking around like, okay, when's the mob going to show up on my street? I want to have something to protect myself. And maybe, their heart was probably in the right place, but the way they went about it was, I'm just going to go get a gun, and that's going to make everything okay.
And that's where I want to pick in on that. So for those people who did just do that, and for the ones who just bought the gun, it's just sitting somewhere. You know who you guys are. He just bought it, and it's just sitting somewhere.
Yeah.
And maybe they spent a lot of money on it. Maybe it's a high point, or maybe it's maybe it's an FN45. Yeah, whatever it is. What should they do with it? What are they doing with it?
So really, it comes down to, if you are not willing to train with that firearm and become proficient with it, you have no business owning it. And I'll tell that, like, I am, as patriotic and pro Second Amendment as they come, but I am very adamant about people having things for the right reason. And if they're not willing to take those steps, then they have no business owning one, because it's only going to cause more harm than good.
Fair.
Yeah. So we do get a lot of that in the shop. People that maybe purchased a firearm during that time, and now they're like, well, that thing's been sitting on the shelf for a long period of time. Maybe I should do so. So they take that first step, and they come in, they ask about training, or they come in just to use the range, right? And we're able to kind of, lack of a better term, kind of get our hooks into them and say, hey, look, how can we help you become safer with this firearm? Because that's what we ultimately want, right? We want law-abiding citizens that are safe with firearms. So on that, we're able to talk with them, especially if like people are coming in for the first time and never purchased a firearm. We get that all the time, particularly with females. That's the vast majority of them are females that either something has happened to them, happened to somebody they know, and it scared them into thinking, hey, I need to go get a gun.
Yeah.
And then we'll sit and we'll have an honest conversation with them. They'll come in and say, yep, I want a gun. Okay, well, why? And you need to elicit that response, because sometimes they'll just, well, I just want one. That's not a good reason.
And you actually deny somebody have you ever had to?
Have you
ever had a weird answer?
Well, when you talk about denials with firearms, I mean, obviously we get a gauge of people when they're in there. Like if somebody's acting like really weird, like we've had that in the past too, where people come in, they're looking at guns, and they just say a certain thing, or they're acting a certain way. Fortunately, having 15 years of law enforcement experience, you get really good at reading people. The other guy I have at the shop, Kerry Fullen, he did 15 years or 13 years in law enforcement, and he was in the military before that. So between the two of us, we get a pretty good read on everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so there's been a few times where I've asked people to leave. Sometimes people will come in either intoxicated or high as a kite, wanting to use the range or purchase a firearm, and we turn them away.
Like,
but for the most part, we try to talk to people and say, okay, give me some background. Like, why are we here today? And then try to work them through that whole process of, okay, maybe a gun isn't your best option. I mean, we have some other options at the shop. We've got some, we call them impact tools, but, some self-defense stuff.
Yeah.
We do sell OC spray at the shop. I'm not a huge fan of that stuff just because of my negative experiences in law enforcement with it.
Oh, I would. Okay,
but
yeah.
That stuff's nasty. But it's like, okay, well, maybe a gun is not the right route for you, but maybe this particular tool is, right?
But for someone whose main goal is, hey, I want to protect my family at home against whatever may be at home,
right?
What would you suggest? What are you telling people? So if I come in and I say, hey, sir, I don't have a gun, I'm kind of a little iffy about it, but, I'm feeling like things are getting weird, and I don't know what to pick. I don't know what to do. Guide me.
Yeah. So we'll get more context, like, okay, how many people do you got in your family? Who, how?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
How many people? I have 7.
Yeah. Okay. So you got 7 people in your family. Do you live in a 2-story house or a 1-story house?
One story. It's apartment.
It's a 1-story bottom floor apartment. Okay. So you have a front door. How many windows do you have in your apartment?
We have about 6.
Okay. Does everybody relatively stay in the same area of the apartment?
No, all spread out evenly amongst.
All spread out evenly. Okay. How close are you in proximity to your front door? Where is your bedroom in context to the front door?
I have bedroom, door.
So it's kind of split. Okay.
Exactly. Split.
So if you exit your bedroom, would you be in direct, we call it crossfire. Would you be standing across from where your other loved ones sleep?
Yes.
Okay. So those are things we got to start talking about, right?
Okay.
And that's when we start getting different types of firearms and what works best where. If anybody's here familiar with how stuff is built here in Las Vegas, houses, maybe, when the builder was building, maybe you got some insulation, maybe you didn't, maybe they skipped your house that day, right? And so we know, and especially through, law enforcement and the shootings that we've been involved in, where those projectiles they'll go through walls. They'll go through, your house. They'll go through your neighbor's house.
Out of the round.
Depending on what it is. That's why we will talk to people and get context of like, okay, where do you live? How's it set up? Are you in a position where you could get all your family members into one place in what we call hard pointing, and say, if you can get all your family members in this place and kind of hunker down like Alamo while you're on the phone with law enforcement to get the cavalry en route, could you hold down the fort from this particular spot? And we've actually started doing that with several families where we go out and almost like a consultant go and do a security assessment of their home and say, okay, look, if you are to take a upfront approach to protecting your family, because the leader of the family, the male of the family, you are the protection for the family. You are your first response.
Yes.
You are in charge of your own personal security detail. Plain and simple.
That's 100% accurate. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Now, other family members can have auxiliary duties. I mean, if your spouse is willing to train with you, more power to you. You've now, doubled your manpower, your force, right? But ultimately, the buck stops with you.
100%.
And you need to know where your strong points are, because nobody knows your house better than you, right?
Big facts.
So you need to know where those strong points are and where you need to get to your family members to get to a certain point where you can hunker down, and if you have to use force to repel an attack,
whatever happens.
Right? But to do so effectively with the right tools. So that's when we'll talk. That's why I ask, okay, you're in an apartment, you have this amount of windows. You're probably not going to go with an AR-15 as a home defense weapon. Everybody automatically goes to that because they think they're big, they're scary, they're going to get the job done. And they can. But when you're talking about over penetration of the projectile, the amount of energy that is produced from those, you could be doing more harm than good. Whereas simply either a pistol or even a pistol calibered carbine, so you're still talking about technically an AR, but in a pistol caliber, so 9mm, 40, 45, something like that thing, and using a defensive style round, so a hollow point round that's not going to over penetrate, it's not going to go through your neighbor's wall and all that kind of stuff. And we'll talk to people about that and get an idea of kind of where their contact, a lot of these females, they live by themselves. We've got a female right now. She's actually becoming a very good client of ours where, due to her profession, she is around a lot of unsavory male characters. Okay, kind of see where I'm going with this. Okay, and she's worried about maybe one night getting followed home, or because she lives by herself.
So that's her specific thing.
And that's her specific thing. So we sat down and talked with her because initially the gun she wanted to get was not the right gun for her. And that's another thing that we kind of set ourselves apart of at the shop is we have a try before you buy program.
Wow.
So we try to take some of the most popular handguns that are used for concealed carry, home defense style, and make them available to the public so they can come in, rent the firearm, shoot it on our range, get a feel for it, and then say, okay, yep, I want to buy that one. And then we take the rental price that we charge to rent the gun off the cost of the gun if we sell it to you in the shop.
Wow. That's a very smart program.
Yeah. And it works out, too, because a lot of times we'll also see people will come in and say, hey, I bought this gun. I shot it one time, and I can't shoot it. It's too much gun for me. Again, going back to the females, if a female goes into a gun shop by herself, depending on the gun shop, she's going to walk out with the wrong gun. Because a lot of times those gun shops are there to... It's almost... I liken it to, when... the difference when a male takes a car in to get the oil changed if they don't change it themselves, and a female goes and gets oil changed. Yep. Female walks out with like 30 different things. Oh, this is broken. This is broken. You need this. You need this. Where if a guy goes in there, they're like, change my oil and go.
Yeah.
Same thing happens in gun shops, right? So we'll get females that'll walk in with that .357 revolver saying, I bought this over at Bob's gun shop, and I can't shoot it. It's like, well, no kidding. It's twice the size of you, right? Yeah. You can't handle it. So then we'll go into the process of like, okay, let's find the right firearm for you. If that's the route you want to go, find the right firearm for you, and then lead you down the path of getting proficient with it.
In training.
And then that's when we transition to the training side where we offer, we have a couple different things where we offer one-on-one sessions They're an hour each, and they literally can span basically anything that somebody wants to go. We have one individual that literally, he just came in. He's like, look, I've owned these 5 firearms for years. I don't know how to clean them. And so literally we used his one-on-one session to teach him how to clean his guns properly.
Wow.
We had another one where a female was very anti-firearm, but took that step because she was, lives alone, did the whole typical female thing, right? And now, like, her first session, in that 1 hour, she fired 1 round. And after she fired that round, it was so overwhelming to her that she's like, I'm done for the day. I got to stop. Now, several sessions later, she's in there rocking it, right? And it's just taking that, it's baby steps. It's not just throwing them into the deep end of the pool and saying, okay, hey, hit the target, go, which unfortunately a lot of the CCW classes here just do that.
Just take the course and go shoot.
You just take the course, go shoot with no training, no build up, no nothing. And that's why we're trying to take a different approach to that and say, hey, do some pre-stuff before you take the CCW, because the CCW is a big decision. Like, a lot of people just go into it like, oh, I'm just going to take the class and I'm just going to have a permit and I'm going to carry concealed.
Yeah, no, it's...
Carrying concealed is a lifestyle change.
It is.
Complete lifestyle change, right?
A lot of people don't get it. A lot of people don't understand.
Right. So we try to get them to where we do like pre-CCW build-up to where, hey, we can both get you more proficient with your firearms so you don't freak out. Because anytime you say you're going to test somebody, they immediately start putting self-pressure on them, right? Yep. Oh, it's a test, it's a test, it's a test. So we'll see people that maybe are pretty decent shots. All of a sudden you say, okay, this is your qualification. Qualification equals the test. And they immediately turn into a stormtrooper, right? Yeah. And they can't hit the broadside of a barn. Whereas if you just send them into the range to have fun, they're blowing the center out of the target.
Because the pressure's off.
There's no pressure there, right? Same thing with the written test for people that are just taking their permit for the first time. There's a written test in the state of Nevada. And so we'll do a precursor to build these people up so that when they finally say, okay, yes, I'm willing to make that decision to get my concealed carry permit and carry a firearm in public, I'm prepared for that class. You go through the class, and ours is different where based on our experiences, we're able to put a little bit more into the class. We're not just some, NRA instructor that went and got the certification and now he's regurgitating theory that he has no experience in. We're able to tell our experiences. We were involved in shootings. We've been involved in violent conflict. We've had to use force. We've had to, pull a trigger in anger. So being able to manifest that and give that to the students in the class, help them better understand that. And then going beyond that, then getting even more into training of like, look, this is just the CCW. This is just the minimum amount the state requires for you to get your permit. It's just the beginning. Yeah, now it's an entire journey.
Because the problem is people get that and then they just stop.
Yep.
They'll get the CCW, they'll carry, and then it's a wrap after that usually.
Or the first time they actually have to carry the gun, they're like, this is way too uncomfortable. I don't like this. Yeah. And they never touch it again.
And it's over. Yeah.
Yep. Happens all the time.
So I got my gun now.
Okay.
We went with what did I go with? What are you suggesting? We never really suggested what I went with.
So I'm a huge Glock guy. I'm a Glock proponent.
So we were gonna go with handgun for what I was talking about.
Okay, so we go with a handgun. It's a good choice in an apartment, right? Okay. Small enclosed places. That's another thing we'll talk about. Is like, okay, is it just for home defense, or are you planning to take it with you? Because that can change too.
Eventually, right now, this one is just going to be one that I want to get kind of comfortable with and leave at the house.
Okay.
And then when I get better, by the way, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I hope everyone knows that. But when I get better, I would like to purchase a secondary one that I can train with and carry on me.
Okay. So based on your stature, I would initially go with a Glock 19. Okay. It's the most popular firearm in...
Yeah, that was my first ever firearm.
Yeah, it was mine too.
It's everyone's first firearm.
And I still have one. I got one in the bag right now. So Glock 19, that's a good home defense weapon. It's got a good capacity, the 15+1 magazine capacity. Like I said, based on your hand size and your structure, you'd be able to handle that firearm pretty well. And then it's still concealable, right? Excuse me. Obviously here in Vegas, when it's 115 degrees out, like CCW can get pretty difficult.
Yeah.
But the 19 is still small enough that you can conceal it and make it work. Transitioning out of that, if you wanted to go smaller and go solely, okay, my 19 stays at the house for home protection. Now I want something a little bit smaller that's easier to conceal. We're immediately going to either the Glock 43X or the 48.
Those are the subcompacts?
Those are the subcompacts.
Okay.
We take it one step further. We actually came across a company called Shield Arms, and what they did is they took the factory specs of a Glock 43X, which is only a 10-round capacity magazine, so not a lot, and they made a metal magazine version that holds 15 rounds. So they double stacked it rather than single stacked it.
Okay.
So now you've got the same capacity.
Isn't that like SIG has a stagger stack?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people were going with SIG because of the larger capacity, right?
I run with SIG now. That's my everyday carry.
Right.
And
So now they make this magazine. Now you have the same capacity as your Glock 19, but in a smaller, more concealable package, right? So we've pushed a lot of people that way to show them that capability, and that's another thing we have as part of the Try Before You Buy is that magazine setup, so they can kind of see the difference between the two.
Very smart distinction for someone to actually be able to put their hands on.
Exactly, yeah, and that's the biggest thing is fitting the firearm to the individual. You know, we've already determined, okay, yes, the handgun is the best route for you, not something else. Now we got to pick the right firearm for you.
Love it.
And go that route.
But real quick, if I come into your shop and I say, "Hey, I'm looking for a home defense gun. I was told that shotgun is the best home defense option." What's your thoughts on that? I have my own thoughts, and we'd like to actually have some dialogue on that. But what are your thoughts on shotgun being the best home defense
Shotguns are great. They really are. The problem with the shotgun is for most adult males, they're not an issue. They can be handled. The problem is what if you're not home?
Yeah.
And your loved one, your significant other, whoever it is, God forbid your kids have to grab that and use it. It's happened. We've seen it in the United States where children have armed themselves to repel, home invaders, right? That's the only thing that holds me back. Do I have a shotgun in the house? Of course I do. Everybody has a shotgun in the house, right?
Exactly.
But as your end-all, be-all home defense gun, it's really a toss-up. If your family members within reason, the ones that you would expect are going to potentially have to use it, can handle it, then there's no problem.
Fair.
But if you can handle it, but you've got a petite, significant other, or like you've got small kids and you're not home, I mean, are you really expecting them to grab that and use it?
No.
Probably not, right? So I'm a big proponent of options. Options are always good.
That's fair.
Now that can always be taken to the extreme. You have a lot of people that are like, oh, check out my gun vault with all these guns. It's like, okay,
they don't know how to use any.
That's great. How many are you proficient with?
Yeah.
It's like the Bruce Lee quote. I fear the man that's practiced one kick 1,000 times. It's I have all these amazing firearms, but how proficient am I with them?
Do they hold them all?
And they do something stupid with them. But if I have that one rifle that I can, slay with at 1,000 yards or whatever, you understand where I'm going with that is options are good, but sometimes options can hurt you. Too many.
See, because my thought is the only argument I have, the reason I stay away, and I tell all my people to stay away from a home defense for shotgun, or for shotgun for home defense, is because usually any size person of any frame, any gender, you needs two hands to manipulate that gun.
Yep.
And in a stressful house situation,
right,
I'm thinking I would want one hand free to call the police, grab the kids, close, open doors. And if I have a shotgun that I have to go every time, my two hands have to always be ready to manipulate that gun. Now I'm at a disadvantage. But if I get proficient with a handgun and use that, then I'm able to also have a hand free to do whatever else I need.
Excellent point. Excellent point, and definitely things to consider. We're also telling people like, hey, if you're using this firearm, you're at your last resort, right?
Like
especially with CCW, right? You no longer get into pissing matches. You no longer get into road rage incidents because now you are armed. There is at least one gun involved in the situation. at least one,
Yeah.
right? That is your last resort, and that's how the state of Nevada looks at it as well. Is deadly force is authorized. It can be used, but as a last resort, right? We don't necessarily have the strict duty to retreats like a lot of other states have. However, it should be your last resort. You should try to get yourself out of that situation to begin with.
Of course,
but in your home, it's your home. You're kind of stuck.
you
You're kind of stuck there, right?
cancel,
So on
cancel.
that thought of, I would tell you, don't just look at it from.
You're good.
Don't just look at it from a. Well, I gotta be able to shoot one-handed because I need to be on the phone with the police. If you're the only one home and that's your only option, handle the threat first.
Yeah.
Right? Handle the threat first and then get on the phone. Or if you have the phone, literally, you can call 911, set your phone down,
And do what you have to do.
and do what you got to do. Because
Yeah.
guess what? That phone's going to get tracked. They have that capability.
But the idea is not just the phone, but it's also like doing other things, grabbing your child.
Absolutely.
Moving the wife, maneuvering, opening
Yes.
door, closing doors, putting door. If you have like door stops,
Mhm.
putting door stops. If you have that little special room
Yeah.
that you was talking about,
Yeah.
there's a door stop in that room.
Right.
You want to grab it, you get the handgun. You be able to still put the door stop under.
Yep.
Still do what you have to do.
Mhm.
That's kind of where my thought is on that one.
Yeah.
Fair. So
Yeah.
okay, we went with handgun now,
Okay.
and I went home. I have a Glock 19.
Okay.
I'm looking at it. What am I doing with it?
So,
What's my first step? I call you. I'm like, hey, bud, I want to train. What am I training?
okay.
What are you showing me?
Yeah. So, and that's where we're going to sit down and say, okay, what is your ultimate goal here? Are you wanting to become so proficient that one day you get into competition, or you literally just using this for home defense? That's going to kind of gear how we structure your training. The first and foremost is we're going to get you into the shop in one of our one-on-one sessions.
Okay.
And first off, we're going to spend at least the first 15, 20 minutes talking mindset, because mindset is the key. If you cannot wrap your head around having the propensity of violence, you have no business being around a handgun.
Love it. Yes.
And that's, again, when people come into the shop with maybe the wrong mindset, we've actually talked people out of buying guns before, which is counterintuitive as a business owner, because you're there to make money,
make the money.
right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I don't think you're going to be safe with a firearm, why would I sell you one?
Fair. Yeah, because
You know what I mean?
You're doing them a disservice.
You're doing them a disservice.
Society a disservice.
You're doing society a disservice. So
Some-
we'll talk mindset, because we'll have people come into the CCW class where they're coming in like, yep, firearm is my only option. Well, if you teach, if you give somebody a hammer and then you teach them every situation they get into is a nail, what are they going to do? They're going to use the hammer on the nail.
Yeah, they're gonna
that's not
hit
always
it.
the right. That's not always the right move or the right call, right? So it's going to be a lot of mindset talk initially of figuring out where your head's at, why you're coming to this decision to train with your firearm. We're encouraging it, obviously, because you need to be proficient, but we want to know exactly what your motivations, because then we can take those motivations and gear your training to accomplish those.
Love it. Yeah.
So getting you in, initially doing hey, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you come into, purchasing the gun? If you bought it from us, we've kind of already had this talk, but if you purchase it from somewhere else, hey, tell us a little bit about the home situation, what you're trying to actually protect, and get an idea. And again, like I said before, between Carrie and I, we're constantly reading people, right, and getting a good gauge of what the individual is trying to accomplish. Once we feel like we have a good, grasp of that, we'll say, okay, let's get you on the range and let's start seeing, how you're holding it, how you might go that entire first session without even firing a shot.
Have you shown me how to hold it yet, or am I just usually letting me?
So we're gonna go in, and that's where we're asking you, like, hey, what is your background? Like, do you have any?
I was scared of guns first. My buddy
Right.
told me to buy one. I came in, I got one.
Yep. So we're gonna make sure we're gonna
Hypothetically.
we're gonna have you bring in the gun. We're going to go over nomenclature, what actually the different parts of the guns that you need to know as a new gun owner are, and then we're gonna go right into how to hold it properly, how to keep it pointed in a safe direction, how to check to make sure that check to see if it's loaded or not, and go through basic firearm safety first, so that puts us in a position where we feel comfortable going on a live fire range with you.
So safety is key.
Yeah, mindset. Keep bumping that. Mindset, and then safety. We're going straight from initial mindset of kind of your ideas and thoughts about having a firearm into firearm safety because we have to make sure 100% that you're going to be safe with that firearm before we even fire a live round on the range.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So a lot of it is going to be safety up first, and then once we feel like we have a good gauge on that and that you're understanding the concepts, you're basically understanding the concepts we're putting out there, then we take you on the range and we start really going into having you hold the firearm and, tweaking and manipulating how you're holding it. Because the vast majority of people, their knowledge of firearms handling is based off of television and movies.
Yes, I've noticed a lot of people hold it wrong. Yes.
It's sometimes it can get scary, right? So it's initially getting rid of this, the old FBI, we call it the teacup.
Yeah.
Or the thumb wrap. And it's like, hey, that's a mistake you'll only make once.
Yeah, when that slide comes back,
you'll only make that mistake once.
It's only when they're holding it, but you're like, you've never actually shot it like that. You've never shot it like that.
Yeah.
Stop acting.
Yeah, so we'll go into that and tweaking how we have come in our firearms experience and teaching and shooting as much as we have over our careers between Carrie and I of, hey, this is what works fundamentally and structurally for 99% of the people out there. There might be some people that they just can't quite get into the certain positions that we're asking them to get into, and we're not doing
tweaks.
And we're just making tweaks. We're not asking anybody to do anything crazy. We're not doing like the SWAT roll down the range to shoot upside down, but we want to make sure that you're gripping the pistol properly. Your trigger finger is in the right position when it's time to put your finger on that trigger, right? And managing that recoil and stance, because out of all those fundamentals, our human brains are amazing, things, but they can only focus on so many things at once, right?
True.
And when
so you have to really
when you throw out this laundry list of fundamentals for accurate shooting, your brain's not going to be able to do all those at once. It just can't. But so you take the ones that are the most important and you focus on those, and that's how you get the accuracy downrange.
Love it.
So
then we started doing that. I took my first shot with you.
Okay.
I'm shooting. Now you taught me the safety rules. You took me down range. Now I'm like, hey, bud, I'm getting ready to go home. I have kids at home. Where am I going to put this?
That's a great question, and that's what we're going to ask you is like, hey, what are your storage options? Did you purchase a safe? Or
I'm willing to get whatever you suggest.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about that. So you said, what do you suggest where I should store this firearm when I get it home?
Yeah. And that's going to come down to, okay, how many people inside the house are going to be expected to use this in a self-defense situation?
2 to 3.
2 to 3. Okay, then it needs to be centrally located to where 2 out of those 3 people can get to it readily.
Yeah.
Right? The old throw it in the nightstand, that doesn't fly anymore, right? If you had that one uncle that had all his prize shotguns in a cabinet in the living room, back in the day, that's mounted on the wall, completely exposed to everything. That doesn't fly anymore, right? You've got to have firearms secured, right? Especially if you have little kids.
So what are we talking?
So we're talking some type of readily opened safe. You don't want to make it too complex, especially if it's being used for personal protection.
That's my point, because that's my biggest fear. Is like, I understand, and this is my personal thing I battle with, actually. Not hypothetical anymore. I understand that there's a safety thing we got to do with the kids.
Yep.
But I also understand that there's a quickness that we have to be able to get to.
And it's managing that fine line, because at the same time, I'll tell you, because we actually do, firearm safety courses for kids.
That was going to be a question, Ted. That was my next.
We'll get down the
kid. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got kids. Where do I store it, and then how do I show them?
So you've got kids, so you got to be mindful of that, right? At what point have you introduced your children to firearms?
Not yet.
So none at all.
That's why was going to be my next question.
Exactly. So you got to make sure that if you're expecting 2 or 3 people out of your household to be able to readily access this firearm for self-protection, it needs to be centrally located, but it also needs to be secure. So until you are comfortable with your children's level of firearms knowledge and safety, it needs to be as secure as possible. Now, in a home defense situation, that can be as much as there's a bunch of companies, Gun Vault, Hornady, a bunch of these companies make home defense style safes where they're either biometrically activated, so like the thumbprint, or they have like the quick access card or something like that. I'm a big proponent of having some type of low-digit combination that's easy to remember, or the biometric, and having the biometric set for each person who is expected to have access to that firearm.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's it.
And a lot of these safes, you can actually put multiple biometrics on it, right?
I've heard that.
So, and having that secured, not just thrown in a cabinet, not just thrown under the bed, that needs to be secured as well, because there's an expectation now from a legal standpoint of, if your firearm's just sitting in the nightstand and somebody breaks into your house while nobody's home, they steal that firearm, and now they use it in the commission of a crime. Precedence has been set, even here in the state of Nevada, where district attorney, state's attorney can actually come after the homeowner, depending on the level of the crime in which it was used in. We've seen that here, where a homeowner was actually charged, negligently charged for not storing a firearm properly. So you have that fine line. So, we're big proponents of not just throwing it in the nightstand, but also having it mounted, bolted down, whether it's bolted down into, the stud, like it's wall mounted, bolted into a stud, to where you can't just be really like ripped off. If you've got like a floor safe, the floor safe is actually bolted to the ground. If it's ground level, you've got the concrete bolts. They make special bolts that if it's on a second story, like in a house, like a 2-story or something like that, that they have floor joist bolts that you can bolt down to it. Because it's just another layer. Now, if somebody's truly motivated, I've watched security footage of like 4 really, really big dudes carrying a 64 gun safe out of a house that was full, right? And just throwing it in the back of a pickup truck. So if somebody's motivated, they're motivated, but you're doing everything you possibly can to keep the firearm secure, and that's what's important.
Fair.
So having it centrally located to where the people that are supposed to have access to it, or are expected to have access to it, can get it centrally located, and then make sure that it's secured to where it can't just be picked up and carried off.
Okay, and then one of those like biometric
or however it is you choose to rapid deploy that thing. Don't do the hidden gun cabinet thing. The shelving and the American flag, like that's become very popular in the 2A community. I'm actually a proponent against that, and the reason for that, and I tell the story during CCW classes, is I worked graveyard for a period of time, and we had a string of home burglaries, and we ended up catching the guy. He was known to us. We dealt with him multiple times, and I was kind of walking through some of these houses, looking at the scenes, and I was seeing, decorative shelving being ripped off the walls, books being pulled off the bookshelves, and it was like a reoccurring theme in each house, and I was like, interesting. Let's dive into this more. So, go to the guy. He had already been read his Miranda rights. He was a career criminal. Like, he's got nothing to lose anyway. Yeah. And, playing dumb at first, I was like, hey, I got to, do you mind talking to me? Yeah, what's up? I said, you got anything against home decor? And he kind of looked at me funny, and I was like, he's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, because he had already admitted to breaking into all these houses. Like, he knew he was going. There's no secrets. He's done. Like, looking at all these houses, like all the shelves are ripped off the walls. Like, you ripped all the books out, and he's like, and he kind of got like that, I'm gonna get one over on you kind of a thing, And he's like, oh, you don't know what those are? No, Mr. Criminal, please,
you tell me.
Please educate me. He's like, well, those can be gun safes. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And this is, pre, 2009, 2010, where those things are really starting to get popular, right? And he's like, yeah, I was watching an infomercial one night, and I saw this advertisement that they have these gun safes that look like decorative shelves mounted to a wall, and if you break it open, you have readily access to a gun. I'm like, really? Do you think he's the only criminal that ever thought of that or saw that infomercial while they were building their lawnmower for the third time on their myth binge, right?
That's a good point.
That's why I tend to steer people away from that kind of stuff, because even though they've got more secure over the years, but everybody knows what those are. Yeah. Like there's
the little mantles.
You got a 50-50 shot that if there is a bulky American flag on somebody's house And these burglars aren't stupid. They're reading the room, right? They're doing any type of surveillance or pre-recon before they do a burglary. They're seeing the stuff you're putting on your cars. Like if you're that guy that has, two-way, I don't call 911,
people,
all that stuff, right? Those are flags saying, hey, there's a damn good chance that there's a firearm inside that house, right? And if that's what they're going after, they're already going to be looking for those certain things. So as soon as they see, that bulky American flag in your bedroom next to your bed, what do you think they're going to do with it? Yeah. They're going to rip that sucker off the wall, and they're going to try to break into it because they know that there's a high likelihood that there's a firearm in there. So I tend to steer people away from those. They look great. They're very patriotic, but they're not great ideas. It's better to have an actual legitimate gun safe bolted down or wired down. A lot of them come with like bike cable style locking systems to really secure them, and that's the route I would go.
Okay. So now we got it secured. I got some basic training. My wife's feeling a little insecure about it.
Okay.
How am I getting her more on board? Like, how am I comforting her in this situation? How am I...
And the biggest thing, because, again, this is something we see every single day, is not taking the overly masculine approach and saying, hey, wife, you got to come train with this because this is what we're going to do. You got to get her involved on a female emotional level. If she's uncomfortable with it, take yourself out of the equation and take her to a professional.
That's a very good point.
Time and time again, we'll have husbands bring their wives in, and he's like, yeah, I've been telling her that she needs to train with this, and you're looking at her, and she's completely tuned him out already because she's heard this, a million times already, and she's kind of being forced in this position that he hasn't even asked if she's comfortable to be in this position yet. Yeah. You might have that significant other that's like, you know what, I got no problem standing behind you, but I'm not getting involved, right?
And what about the ones who just don't even like guns in the house?
Exactly. We've come across that multiple times, and it's if they are so uncomfortable where they don't want anything, you are not going to get them to a point unless something happens to them, some type of traumatic experience that either happens to them or somebody close to them. If their mind is already made up, you're not going to change it.
So is that not when we take the masculine route and say we're doing it anyways because it's my duty to protect the family and I'm just going to bring one home? I will do my job to make sure it's safe, make sure I offer you the training if you're willing to take it.
Yep.
But this is something I have to do.
Yes, and as long as you're doing it from that stance of like, look, I am taking an active role in our family's protection, hopefully your spouse can understand that. And again, it's all about how you sell it, right?
It's not how you,
and how you
say it,
I mean,
how you
everybody
say it.
knows their significant other and how, you need to talk to them if you're trying to convince them to get something done. So, but the other big thing is inviting them to train, right? Yeah. Tell them, like, hey, especially if they're very leery about firearms, you don't run them in like, hey, we're going to have you, like, rolling around, we're going to be like, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, over here, and we're going to be doing this. They're going to be like, yeah, go pound sand. I ain't doing that, right? Yeah. But if you introduce them and say, hey, let's go shooting and give them an opportunity to shoot in a safe environment, or, hey, we're going to go to the gun shop. We're going to talk to the guys about guns. If you bring them to us, we're going to do our thing just like what we did with you in your initial training aspect. We're going to do the same thing to your significant other.
Do you guys have a female on duty? So if I'm like, my wife's like, she's a little intimidated by dudes, maybe there's like a girl you could direct me to, blah, blah, blah. Because I love your stance, by the way, on what you said, to take yourself out of the equation and hire help.
Yeah.
Because I'm the type of person that I take firearms pretty seriously. So whenever I'm around them, I kind of have a switch that goes on, and I know that she won't like that switch. Yep. And I know I won't turn that switch off.
Right.
So I don't know how to adjust the switch. So when I go find a professional, I think that they can mitigate that.
Right. It's getting her in the door is your first step, right? Yeah. If she's going to fight you on it, you're never going to get her in that shop or into that class. It's just not going to happen.
Getting her in there slowly.
Right? But getting her in there just through the door, she's already mentally made that decision that she's willing to take that next step, right? Yeah. And it's just slowly, it's no different than if you were, when you're teaching children new things or introducing them to something that's potentially scary, like riding a bicycle. as you know, from a supportive position, taking your masculinity out of it for a second and saying, look, this is why I feel the way I feel. I would like you to participate and see where that conversation goes.
I would like to point out that's a very masculine way to say it too. Just so you know,
Yeah.
that's not taking masculine out of it.
Right.
Masculine doesn't have to be like you're doing this.
Right.
Masculinity can just be I'm gonna lead and guide the situation.
Exactly.
And be open about it
Exactly.
instead of Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make that clear that
Yeah.
that's not the only masculine route.
Yeah. It's all how you sell it. But if you can get them to that point and then taking yourself out and say, hey, look, either we've had a bad experience before, which happens all the time, where husband takes wife out to shoot. She doesn't handle it exactly how he wants her to handle it. He snaps at her or does something where
gets all aggressive.
gets all
drill
aggressive.
sergeant-y.
Or maybe she pulls the trigger and freaks out and drops the gun or just does something necessarily like unsafe. It becomes a traumatic experience, right? And that will be imprinted on her memory,
tarnish.
and it will either ruin her permanently or it will make her very, very leery. So by taking yourself out of the equation, and we see this a lot actually in law enforcement where we'll have wives of police officers come in and like, I won't shoot with him because he turns that switch and he gets a certain way. And we're able to kind of explain like, hey, I can see where he's coming. I know where he's coming from because I was a police officer. This is how we are around guns and whatever. But flipping it to say, okay, now that he's over here, how are we going to move you forward? What are your goals? Do you want to even participate in this? We had one couple came in. The husband was adamant, I want my wife trained. Yeah. I don't care what it takes. I want her trained. Okay, well, do me a favor. Go over to that side of the shop. Look at all our eye candy, right? Yeah. Pick out something you like.
Look at all the nice colors.
And then I'm gonna have a conversation with her for a minute. Yep, sure, cool. Talking to her, she's like, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't want anything to do with it. And being able to gauge, okay, is this just a wall she's put up, or is she legitimately like not on board? Yeah. And in that particular, she was 100%. There's not a snowball's chance in hell that she's gonna get on board with this. And then having not with her present, but going to the spouse and being like, hey, look, dude, this is not going to go well. She is not on board. Not saying that can't change in the future, but as of right now, she is a brick wall, and nothing we can say or do is going to break through that right now. She needs to get past whatever traumatic experience she had to get past this. And they walked out, and she didn't get trained that time. Wow. We've been in contact with them since, and things have gotten a little bit better.
But she's good for not forcing it. Because we, like us as dudes, we want to force it. Like, why won't you just learn? Like, why won't you just take this seriously? But I see exactly where you're coming from. Yeah.
So we'll take a more unique approach of, granted, we don't have females on staff, but again, drawing from our law enforcement experience of being able to talk to people and talk them through things and get an idea of why are they giving me the answers they're giving me, and taking a more psychological approach.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Not to be personal, are you married?
Yeah.
Is she on board?
Yep. So I was very fortunate. My wife grew up in a household where her dad was a rodeo cowboy, so very patriotic. Yeah. Her grandfather was a UDT, so prior to them being designated Navy SEALs, they were called underwater demolition teams. Oh, okay. So he was like the original Navy SEAL in World War II. So they have a long history of patriotism, firearms. So they were avid hunters. So like firearms were not a big deal. Yeah. When we started dating, I was already a police officer at the time, and so she very quickly came into that of, okay, I'm with a police officer. He's going to have certain things he's going to need to do at times. And we had open conversations. That was probably the biggest thing, was having open conversations. Her already being on board to the extent of like, hey, this is life and I'm okay with this. We were already past that. That was never an issue for us. And then being able to take it to the next step of like, okay, how are we going to operate as a team? And by that, I mean, when we're out, are we both carrying? I'm always carrying.
Good point.
Is she always carrying? Because she didn't initially have a gun for probably the first 3 years we were married. She did not carry a firearm. She just didn't. it wasn't until she was pregnant with our first child that she herself took on that, hey, if I'm Mama Bear and I'm out by myself, I need to be able to protect myself and my children.
Mm-hmm.
So she took that initial approach of saying, okay.
That's a lucky situation.
Yes, I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate. So that was never an issue. The other aspect of that, we've never had an issue with worrying about our kids getting into guns. Mm-hmm. Being in law enforcement, we were very upfront and honest with our children, teaching them very, very early.
You demystify it all.
And you, if you take away all that, if you take away the unknown, you've eliminated 80% of your problems.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people, like, they'll hide it and they'll, like, make it, like, such, like, this magical mystery thing.
Exactly.
And now the kids are so curious and they're climbing up shelves to figure out, why is Daddy always putting that thing in that box?
He always yells at me when I get in the closet.
Why am I getting so close? And instead of that, you don't, like, you demystify it for them.
Yeah.
You make it obvious.
Yeah, we took a very advanced approach with that. So we've been very fortunate up until this point. We've got 3 kids from 10 to 5, and we've never had an issue with them trying to, like, sneak in and get something. I mean, they're smart kids. Yeah. They'll ask questions. They knew, from a very early age, they put 2 and 2 together, like, hey, Dad's a police officer. There's guns around. When I was on the SWAT team, I had a special truck that had special equipment in it, and they just knew and they understand that. So we were very fortunate in that aspect.
But for those who aren't, what age are we talking to start introducing, even just introducing the concept of reality of firearms, not games and movies and iPads, but what's the reality?
Because that's the thing is, if you don't teach your kids, somebody else will.
That's what I'm saying. Hip hop or movies or
So our firearm safety classes that we put on for kids, we start at kindergarten age, and we work our way up.
What age? Give me
kindergarten is like 3, 4.
4, 3 or 4.
Yeah, start about 5 because you really start getting into that cognitive thinking.
Yeah,
like a 5-year-old knows what's up.
Yeah,
right. And there's some really smart 3 and 4-year-olds, but 5, 6, you're really starting to. That child's really starting to become aware of their surroundings. Mm-hmm. So they're able to, and another thing is holding attention, right? You've got to make it like, we can sit down and we can have this conversation. We can talk tactical and do all that stuff. But if you're a 5-year-old, I'm talking to you completely different about a gun than just you and I having this conversation now. So we really have to flip that script and make it enjoyable to where we can maintain the kids' attention. And then we're also showing the parents like, hey, this is how you talk to your kids about guns. And if it requires you being silly and not, if you're the guy that always walks around like I'm Mr. Macho and I got a gun, you're not going to teach your kid that way. Or they're going to learn that, being macho means I have to have a gun. Yeah, and it creates this whole
weird vibe about it,
culture around it that you don't want to have it there. But if you make it a learning environment and explain to them, like, they're smart, they'll get it. At a young age, it's like, hey, this is something that can be dangerous, and we don't touch it. We don't play with it. If you see a gun somewhere, you immediately leave the area. You go tell an adult that you found a gun. Mm-hmm. There's a great program. Say what you will about the NRA. I have my own opinions about them as an organization as a whole. But when it comes to firearms safety, they do a lot of great things.
Okay.
So we actually incorporate one of their programs called Eddie the Eagle. And it's a program geared towards firearm safety for kids. So that's kind of the model we use in our classes of making it fun. It's a cartoon, and they talk about situations where kids, may come across the gun. And in this day and age,
what age is the earliest you allow?
And again, that's from kindergarten all the way to age 16.
You allow that in your class?
Yes, and our class is free.
I was about to ask that. How?
Yep. Free of charge.
Okay, so anybody in the Henderson, Nevada, Las Vegas area, if you're watching this. Free. He just offered you guys free. Take your kids, and please, if you're not willing to show them, let a professional show them the right way, so you can now start taking the next step into your training and your. Yeah, that's wonderful. So, I'm bringing all my kids.
Okay, yeah, and it's again we gotta remember because we don't just do today's 5 to 6 and this day is gonna be 7 to 8. We kind of put them all together, right? So you got to hold the attention of everybody. So there's a video involved. There's coloring books that are age appropriate, and then there's informational cards that we give to the parents to say, hey, here's how you start that conversation. Because the conversation around guns is the same conversation you have about the birds and the bees or anything else, right? It's one of those conversations that you need to, the important stuff, right, that we have to impart into our children. Guns is no different. So it shows parents how to start that conversation. But again, that was one thing that I was very adamant about, of giving back to the community, even though I'm not a police officer anymore and not serving my community in that capacity, still being able to serve the community and give back by offering these types of trainings. So yeah, like we said, the kids class is totally free. It's 2 hours, so it's not like taking up an entire day.
What's the minimum allowance? If I could get 6 kids or 7 kids in a class.
We put classes on for 1 kid. Granted, we have a sign-up period and people, and again, that's kind of one of the catches is if people aren't paying for it, there's no real obligation for them to actually show up. So we've had ones where we had 15 people show up or sign up with their kids, and 3 actually show up. And that's just something where it's like, hey, you know what? The people that are serious about firearm safety, they showed up. Granted, they didn't pay anything. But we do that. We have the classroom portion where we talk about that.
How valuable. I'm sorry, but I think that's such a good thing.
And then we offer, with the parents' consent, because the parents have to be on board with this, we actually will take their child age appropriate, so we don't do it for anybody under the age of 8. Okay. But we will actually take them onto the firing range. You have hearing protection, the whole thing, and we have a little 22 single fire rifle that we'll actually set up in a tripod so they don't have to sit there and try to hold it and balance it. It literally sits in the tripod. We're right there kind of guiding them through the thing. The parents right there watching the entire thing. Some parents film it because they're really proud. Of course. Some are just like kind of like, all right, how's this going to go? But we let them shoot at a target with a 22 and completely demystify what a gun is.
Wow. And
actually shoot it on the range. Wow. All for free.
But here's a quick question.
Okay.
If you give them a 22, that's a little light, right? Is that not showing the severity of what it
Well, and again, because
do?
you're trying not to make it a traumatic experience, right?
Okay,
so
fair.
if I take
devil's advocate,
if I take this 308, even if I put it in a tripod and I stick a 8-year-old behind it, it's going to knock them flat on their ass.
Make them fly,
right?
Yeah.
But a 22 is manageable. It's still relatively loud because you're in an indoor range. 22s still make noise.
Yeah.
So it's enough to get the auditory response and the visual response of, hey, because we put the target close enough so that they can actually see where they're shooting, right?
Yeah.
We'll take the target down. They're able to take it home with them and hang it up on their wall, all that kind of stuff, so they can see, okay, when I pull this trigger, there's a loud noise. Depending on where and how they're standing, they might feel a little tiny bit of that recoil, but they're seeing where their rounds are impacting, and we almost make it like a game. Because of the type of target we use, we give them certain areas to shoot. We're like, okay, I want you to shoot over here, and I want you to shoot over here. So they turn it into a game, which makes it a more easily learning environment. And it takes all the mystification out of the firearm. Now, and then on top of that, then it's on the parents to follow up with that. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And continue that.
Keep the training going.
And keep that going. Yep.
Man, that is very cool. You blew me away with that one, actually. Yeah. I'm taking my kids to that for sure. Once the kids start learning and getting comfortable, and they've taken your course and I've done a few more things, can the storage be a little bit more lax?
I would not go lax, just because, again, you're thinking about, okay, what if we're not home and somebody breaks into the house? You don't want to make that firearm any more readily accessible.
Yeah. What if it's one that you've gone down the path of training, or that now you conceal carry, but it's when you get home, and the kids know about it, and everyone's comfortable with it. Can one leave it like on his nightstand while he's sleeping potentially?
I mean, potentially you could. Again, it's going to come down to how does your home operate. Like,
I'm asking very specific questions.
The culture that you develop in your house. If you're one of those families where it's not abnormal for all the kids to just be hanging out in mom and dad's room, then you're probably going to continue to make those conscious decisions. Like, I have a 10-year-old son. He knows about firearms. Am I going to lead a loaded AR-15 just leaned up against the wall? Probably not, right? Not. It's not. Why create a problem when there doesn't need to be a problem,
Why
a
give 'em
potential
even an
problem,
option?
right? Don't give them the option.
Are kids even strong enough to operate those things? Like to pull back a charging handle and to manipulate and know where the safety is? And
in this day and age, if they are playing any type of video game or watching TV, I guarantee you they know how that gun runs.
that is
And a lot of
such
times,
a valid point.
I had
dude.
funny concept. We had that one class I was telling you about that we only had one kid show up. This kid showed up. He asked his dad to go, and he literally showed up. And the only thing he wanted to do was talk about guns, because he was like a gun connoisseur. The kid was 9 years old, 8 years old, 8 or 9. But he's like one of these kids that's always on the internet.
Yeah, Call of Duty.
Call of Duty. He was in there. He's like,
mods and
hey,
optics.
do you have this type of gun? Do you have this guy? And he's talking about guns that like I've never seen. I'm like, dude, no, we actually don't.
Yeah.
But that's a good question, And he was he kind of like a little bit of a whiz kid, right? But I guarantee if I put an AR-15 in that kid's hands, he'd be able to run it.
I don't doubt it.
Better
That's
than-
I didn't even think about that perspective, dude. That's a very good perspective.
Right.
The kids who are playing these games now, they can definitely operate one of
And they're
those
becoming more and more realistic. Like there's no reason why you can't expect your child, if they are exposed to any type of violent movies or violent video games, they know how these things.
Yeah, they know how
they know how they work.
And like I said, again, I'm just playing devil's
You know,
advocate.
of
But
course.
I was just
Yep.
because I know there's a lot of people that's their idea. Is like, oh, well, the AR is a safer platform because it's a lot harder to maneuver. It's a lot harder to manipulate.
Yeah.
The charging handle is a lot stronger. Like it takes strength to really charge it back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that argument lies. But
Yeah.
that's a very valid point.
Yeah. Like I said, I've been very fortunate with my children. They have never given me a reason to not trust them around firearms. But why would I create that situation in the first place?
Yeah.
So again, it really goes down to like what I said earlier of creating that culture within your home. Like in our home, if something's wrong or something needs to be done, yeah, the kids come in my bedroom, but it's not a place where they're allowed to hang out. Like my bedroom is not a hangout spot.
Yeah.
Right? That's what the living room is
that's the
for. That's what the
same-
kitchen is for. It's all that stuff.
Your
And then
room.
and then obviously that's for a variety of reasons. It's not just the firearms, but I mean there's things that go on
Of course.
in the bedroom
Of
that they
course.
just don't need to be around, right?
100%. I love that.
It's creating that culture of like, hey, if I already know it's not kosher for me to hang out in mom and dad's room, I'm not going to be in there anyway. And if that's where the firearms are being stored, I'm not in that room,
Yeah.
right? If now you do the old, like just throw it on top of the fridge is in the kitchen, and kitchen is common area, right?
Kids
There's
are
going to be kids
climbing,
everywhere,
yeah.
right? So you've got little kids that are exploring and doing whatever. But again, I'm just not going to put my children in that position to potentially make that choice, right?
Yeah.
If I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
need to, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, if
So,
there's not a problem. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If there's not a
Yeah.
problem, why create
Yeah.
a problem?
And again, we're some of the outliers because now we own a gun shop, right? So we went from law enforcement where they knew dad had guns and guns were around, and they knew mom carried a gun. Now all of a sudden, for the most part, especially during the summers, we live at the gun shop, right? That's where the family can be together. So it took a level of learning and trust with the children because initially they want to help, right? When they see dad put the guns away for the day, I want to help. Well, no, you got to show me that you're going to be responsible with that gun. So we put them through that firearm safety class. I take my children out shooting regularly to demystify it, right? And it got to the point over the summer, it's like, okay, you want to help dad carry that .22 rifle into the vault? Cool. As long as you're carrying it in that safe position, you're not horsing around with it, you're not pointing it in an unsafe direction, you can show that you're being responsible,
Yeah.
I'll let you help. And now guess what? Now you've instilled that level of respect and trust with your
And not just
child.
that, now you're bonding.
And again, you're creating that leadership
Yeah,
position,
you're
right?
task
You're leading
stacking.
your family
Yeah.
and creating that future leader.
Yeah, I love that.
So, yeah.
Okay. And then one more question, and we're probably going to start coming to a close here, but one more question. In talks about preparedness
Mm-hmm.
in its traditional form, prepping,
Right.
survival, all that kind of stuff, if someone's trying to enter that world, we know there's the food you got to worry
Mhm.
about, there's the water, there's the communications, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
When talking about security, do those gun options change? if we're talking about bug out, shit hit the fan,
Right.
worst case scenario, we
Yeah.
need to store ammo for this weapon. It needs to be able to be used without potentially being cleaned that often. Those kind of things.
Right.
Where's your thoughts?
So when we talk about demystifying prepping, right? So for so long, if you said the word prepping or prepper, you immediately thought of that hillbilly up in the woods that just had, or remember the Tremor movie? The guy, the people like Reba McEntire, they had like this compound, right? That's what you thought about prepping. What society has been able to do with people that have done it correctly is demystify the prepping aspect and say, hey, look, you're not prepping to be that weird person. You're prepping to be prepared. That's what prepping is.
If you know my channel, I have videos all about like prepping is a big.
Right.
So I'm trying to do my part in demystifying it.
Yeah.
That's why my whole model of number one is prepare.
Yeah.
Lead, protect.
Right.
I think that's number one.
Yeah. So we're talking, and we're actually this upcoming year we're going to take a more aggressive approach with it because we started dabbling in it this year, and then just the way society was going and with the economy and whatever, just people weren't training as much as we were hoping they would. But we actually have we hosted 2 this year, and we're going to try to make it quarterly. Where I have very good friends of mine. Their name is Scott and Annie Travis. They live up in Salt Lake right now. They used to be Henderson residents. They lived down here forever, and they moved up there. But she's been prepping for a couple decades and has gotten very proficient at it on the food and the water side, the freeze drying and all that stuff. Like
homesteading.
She is amazing, and over time she has gotten him into it and gotten him on board with it. And so we literally we bring them down for a symposium. We did a 2-day symposium where the first day was all about prepping, food storage, water storage, bug out bags, medical, all that stuff. And then the second day was more firearm centric. Hey, prepping needs to involve a firearm. I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, 100%. What are you preparing for? Natural disaster? Okay, even if it's a natural disaster, look what happened during Katrina. Look what just happened when Texas had that ice storm that took out power and water for weeks.
Isn't North Carolina or some Carolina
North Carolina right now
power at all?
Right, and that was a terrorist attack, right?
Was it confirmed?
Yeah. So it was an attack on the power grid. Yeah. So
is this confirmed?
Yeah.
Because up to like 2 days ago.
So and again, when we start talking about, because
I'm a rabbit hole kind of guy, my friend.
Our society has changed where we're kind of transitioning away from the whole, hey, when you think of a terrorist, you think of some Middle Eastern jihadist, right?
Yeah.
Traditionally, that's the 2001 era thinking of what a terrorist is. That has now morphed into, call it politicizing, call it whatever you want with our culture here in society. Is now when you talk about terrorism, you're not talking about domestic terrorism.
Yeah,
you're talking about groups within the United States that are trying to hurt other people.
Within the United States.
Whether it's attacking infrastructure, certain groups of people, whatever it is, terrorism has now gone from like a foreign concept to a domestic concept, right? So when we talk about prepping, that's what we're taking a more aggressive approach with in 2023, is having more of those symposiums where we're bringing subject matter experts into the shop, because our gun shop, not only do we have the traditional gun shop where there's gun cases and guns everywhere and ammo, and we have the range, but I was very adamant. I actually took a portion of the building and turned it into a classroom.
Good job.
Yeah. So not only does it serve for us doing our CCW classes, because now we teach the class, we walk right across the shop into the range. It's a one-stop shop. I wanted to be able to have the opportunity to have classroom capability.
Yes.
So we built the classroom in there. So we're going to be doing that where we're having those symposiums of bringing subject matter experts in to talk about all different types of pillars, if you will, of pillars of preparedness, right?
If you need, I have a guy,
okay,
ex-military guy. His life is that. He was actually on my podcast. He did the introduction to prepping for everybody that was watching.
Yeah, great.
If you ever need anybody for the symposium or whatever, he's on board with all the things when it comes to prepping.
Awesome.
He actually has a YouTube channel dedicated to teaching people how to prep.
Yeah.
But anyway, so go ahead. We're talking about prepping.
Yeah. So we're getting those in so that we can educate the community, educate people that want to take an active thing. Because again, you saw it during the pandemic. Nobody was prepared to get locked down in their house for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, supply chains are getting strained. There was mass violence occurring over toilet paper. Right? Now, I'm not saying you're that guy that goes and hoards like 60 bales of toilet paper, but there's a level of preparedness that you can have to where it's like, hey, you know what? The rest of the world's burning down around me, but guess what? Me and my family are going to eat.
And we're going to be chilling.
The other concept and I've actually gotten kind of myself in hot water with this before, where in a group setting where we're talking about preparedness and whatnot, and I had another guy say, well, I don't have food storage, but I know you do. I'm just going to come in and help myself to your stuff. I'm like, you'll die trying, right? And that rubbed that person in the setting that we were in.
Around to find out.
It probably wasn't the way to go about it, but I wanted to make it very clear of like, look, my stuff is for me and my family. Your job as the head of your household is to protect and provide.
For your family.
Right? And preside, right? So.
Did you just say order a man quote?
Oh, yeah.
Guess who's coming tomorrow?
Oh, no way.
Kip Sorensen.
Okay. Kip's still a good dude.
Yeah,
Kip's still a good dude.
Yeah, the co-host.
Very cool.
I have him coming tomorrow.
Good.
He's going to be here tomorrow to interview.
Good.
We're talking about blended families and stuff.
Awesome.
That is crazy. I have his book, Ryan Mickler. I have Ryan Mickler's picture in my pocket. He's the reason I started all this.
Yeah.
That's crazy. He said preside. Shout out.
Protect.
Order
man, right?
He is the one. Anyways, go ahead.
But he's a great resource for reintroducing masculinity into society and getting away from this whole
his book Sovereignty.
Thing. Yep.
The Masculinity Manifesto. All shouts out really to Ryan Mickler and his whole organization.
Good dude.
The Iron Council, everything. Big shout outs. Anyways.
Anyway, so what we're talking, and now we're going into a more talking about on the firearm side of being prepared. We want to take an approach of, okay, what are you actually preparing for? Are you preparing, and we're proponents of having, again, like I said earlier, options. I want options. I need to have the ability of setting myself up for success and saying, okay, if I am out away from my home, because our home is our castle, right?
Yes.
Our home is our home base, our compound, if you will. If I'm away from that, what do I have on my person at any given time? Right?
First level right there.
So I got to start thinking about myself. For some people, that's just a pistol. Some people, it's some type of fixed blade. When we're talking about yourself, you're like, okay, and then we can dive so far into this, but on the surface, it's, okay, what is the level of society at the time that you have to take action? Has society completely crumbled, or is there some semblance?
We're preparing for now. We're now preparing to see just in case something happens.
Okay.
So we want to make sure
first and foremost, you should have some type of handgun or fixed blade or both if you're willing to go that route, okay? On your person, right? If you're preparing to make holes in something, you should have the ability to patch holes. So you're having some type of medical, right? I carry a tourniquet with me everywhere I go. It's literally part of my everyday carrier, my EDC. I have my pistol, I have my wallet, I have my phone, and I have a tourniquet.
Love it.
Okay?
Knife?
Because
I didn't hear you say knife.
I have two.
Okay, perfect.
I have a folder for everyday bullshit, and then I have a fixed blade.
Love it.
Okay? So with that, it's, okay, I have what I have on my person, right? I'm far more likely to use that tourniquet in a situation than I am my firearm, but I need to have both, right? So I have what it's on my person. I have a couple different approaches to that of, hey, do I have some type of support bag with me? Like the one I brought in today, that's got like full-on medical gear in it where I could respond to a low-level trauma, okay? And it has, everyday sustainment stuff that I do for my business. But what do I have on my person? Okay. Your next ability is to get to your mode of transportation, whether it's a motorcycle, car, truck, van, whatever it is. That's your rig. That's your mode of transportation. What do I have in that? Each time we go from a different section, we're leveling up, or I hate to say bulking up, but you're leveling up what you have available to you. If I'm only carrying a pistol, like some of these guys that say, oh, I'm going to carry, a folded 7-inch AR-15 everywhere I go, I was like, shut the fuck up. No, you're not. Yeah. You're going to do it for one day. You're going to get sick of it, and you're never going to do it again. That's stupid. Knock it off. You're doing yourself a disservice, and you're being a moron. But you got a pistol on you, right? Now, if I'm in my vehicle, I have the capacity to go to something bigger. So I might have like a better term, a truck gun, right? What that truck gun looks like is it just, hey, I'm here to just protect myself, like we saw it during the riots, right? Where people are shutting down whole streets and cars are getting stuck in that. And now all of a sudden, if that mob gets violent, they're now attacking that car. What are you going to do? Yeah. We saw some people, they panicked and hit the gas. Honestly, in those types of situations, I don't have any issue with that.
Yeah.
In other situations, people panicked and they got ripped out of their cars and beaten up. A couple guys got killed, right? So you got that. At what level are you like, okay, where am I at? A lot of that goes into mindset and pre-planning and getting around those areas. But, okay, if I'm now in my rig, am I just protecting what's in my rig? Is it just me? Do I have my family in the rig? Because that changes everything. That changes everything. Even if society is all hunky-dory, if I am by myself, I'm probably going to let more slide around me.
Of course.
As opposed to if I've got my family in the car.
100%.
Right? So if we have that type of truck gun, if you will, what is it set up for? Is it a pistol caliber carbine? Is it an AR-15? What are you intending to do with it? And then obviously we can go into the training and have you ever actually trained inside of a vehicle? Most people haven't. But they think they throw an AR underneath the back seat, they're going to be Johnny Rambo and grab it and be able to defend themselves out of a car. Yeah. And they're going to go all Sicario on everybody and everything's going to be hunky-dory. It's not going to happen. You're going to be, lying on the side of the road dead. But now we've gotten from a car, now we're trying to get home, right? So you have what can sustain you on your person to get to your rig. Now you have what's in your rig to sustain you to get to your home. Yeah, and now you're just constantly leveling up. When we start talking about the house, this is where we get into that concept of, do guys have gun rooms, just walls and walls of guns that they hardly ever train with? Or are they taking a smarter approach and saying, okay, when it comes to prepping, when it comes to bugging out or bugging in,
which is what I'm a proponent of.
Right. And it's all situationally based.
Of course, situational.
And
we
whatnot.
can get into that at some point. We'll have a podcast.
And then this valley is interesting when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but, okay, do you have a room full of guns? Okay, now let's say you bugged in and now it's time to bug out. Are you going to take all those with you? Of course you're not. Which ones do you take? How far are you going? Are you going on foot? Are you going in a vehicle? If all of society is broken down, you're not getting very far in that vehicle.
Very
right? True. At some point, you're going to run into some type of...
I know it's dramatic. When EMP happens, you're not using that vehicle.
You run into traffic. You run into roadblocks. Depending on the level of society, there's a bunch of really great books about this type of concept of different levels of societal breakdown and what to potentially expect and how to maneuver that environment. One of the books is called Prairie Fire. It's by a former
Prairie Fire. I've heard of the one guy named James Wesley Rawls, who's like super into this kind of stuff. The Patriot is a book that I've heard.
Okay, honestly, I can't remember the author's name, but Prairie Fire is the book, and it talks about that kind of stuff of, hey, your level of bugging out depends on the level where society's at and engaging that. But anyway, okay, do you have a rig? How far are you going to get in that rig? Are you going to have to continue on foot? Where is your ultimate destination, right? If all of society is broken down, we have no food, no power, no one's staying in this valley.
Yeah.
Right? The people that are staying here have some access to resources, and they're going to turn it into their own little kind of fiefdom, and they're going to run rampant like the Walking Dead, right? So how are you going to maneuver that? How are you going to get around that? Whatever. You can go into a million different rabbit holes, and chase that rabbit all day long. But what are you going to take with you? Having the ability to say, okay, I've got a pistol, depending on the level in which you're moving. You have some type of rifle. I'm a strong proponent of having some type of general purpose rifle, okay?
At least one.
At least one, right? When you get into, you got a ton of people, especially during the pandemic, this was one of the comical things we'd hear, like, oh, society breaks down. I'm just going to go and hunt for my food. Have you ever been hunting? Well, no. Do you even know where there are animals to hunt? Well, no.
You
So
find
what do
the
you?
animal? Do you even know where to hit them?
Yeah.
at?
So let's say you come across. Let's say you make it to an area where there's actually deer, and you shoot that deer, and you manage to kill that deer. Do you know how to field dress that animal properly so you don't get sick? Well, no. So you tell me that you're just gonna go
You're just gonna
hunt.
go hunting.
That ain't gonna fly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's having that ability. So we go about that. Like I build everything from, AR-15s that are chambered in 223 up to, these 308s. Am I going to, potentially truck over a mountain with a 308? Probably not. Okay.
Yeah.
We actually took this concept. It's actually this rifle right here where we took a concept of this whole thing of, bugging in, bugging out, having that one rifle. If I could only take one rifle with me,
Yeah.
what would I take and what would I use that for? And making it what we call that general purpose rifle to where could you use it to hunt? In theory, yeah, you could within certain distances. Could you use it to defend yourself? Could you use it in a urban environment? Because when we start talking about the end of the world and everything, obviously The Walking Dead is the first thing you start thinking of because like
100%.
not only
I tell
zombie
everybody
stuff,
I tell
but-
everybody to prep for the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, because even if it's not, Hollywood, your concept of what a zombie is, if you watch that show and watch the cultures and the tribes and the populaces that grouped together, if society breaks down, that's what's going to happen. Another great movie is The Postman with Kevin Costner.
The Postman.
The Postman. I strongly suggest you go watch that.
100% I will. If it's prepping, if it's any kind of
Because it's not necessarily about
related.
prepping per se, but it's about societal breakdown and
That's-
how people
react. That's what's most important to me,
Right.
honestly.
And honestly, when I think of complete societal breakdown, I start referencing those movies because that's what's going to happen in society. That's how people are going to react. So building a general purpose rifle and having it set up to do everything I need it to do, whether it's, okay, now it's I Am Legend, Will Smith. He's in New York. He's in an urban environment. And he's trying to clear apartments to get supplies, whatever it is he's doing, right? Depending on how that rifle is set up, is that going to be good in an urban environment? Can you clear rooms with it? Like close quarters battle is what it's called, CQB.
Yeah, CQB.
Can you CQB with it? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Okay, now we're in more of a rural or maybe even a mountainous area. Is your little tiny 7.5-inch AR going to get the job done? In a wilderness environment? No, it's
Probably
not,
not, yeah.
right? But on the flip side of that, do I want to take a 16 or an 18-inch AR or a 308
Truck that through
and truck that through everything? No, because you've reduced your magazine capacity, right? Because the rounds are larger, so you're carrying less. Ounces equal pounds, pounds equal pain, right? So if you're not setting yourself up to pack stuff out, like I was talking to my wife this other day. I'm like, look, I'm going to set a waypoint, and it's going to be a while. We have property in a certain area of Utah, and probably not during the summer because it probably wouldn't go very well, but in a spring or maybe next fall, I'm going to load out as if I'm going to bug out with everything in a pack. So anything I can only carry on my person, rifle and all, and I'm going to walk from Henderson to that location in Utah. And by Google standards, like if you Google the route and you hit the walk feature, allegedly it's supposed to take like 5 days to get there.
Oh my God.
And I'm going to do it because I want to see and I want to test the theory of what level do people think that they're going
You're
to
actually
bug
gonna
out.
do that?
I'm going to do it. Mark my words, I'm going to do it.
I promise you, I want you back here after so I can talk about it and we'll
Yeah.
document the journey and
Yeah.
talk about what happened.
Yeah, but I'm going to do that to prove the point of people think that they're just going to magically bug out.
No, it's not.
And
Yeah.
it's not. It takes that preparation, that
100%,
prepping
100%.
to do that, right? The people that you're going to see excel in those things are military and law enforcement because they have that kind of structured of, military especially. They've done
the mindset
they've
is
done forced ruck marches where they've had a loaded pack and had to cross distances.
Yeah.
So they kind of already have that concept in mind. People that are athletic, they do a lot of hiking or trekking, if you will, on that sort. Like those are the people that kind of already have that concept in mind, and those are good subject matter experts to talk to about. Okay, hey, how do I set up a backpack properly?
Yeah.
right? If you're not used to it and you think you're just going to throw your JanSport on and some
bug out.
and some spam and go and a bunch of AR magazines, you're not going to make it very far, right?
Yeah.
You have to be very systematic in doing that. So I say that all to say this: we think that we've built the best general purpose rifle for all circumstances.
Do you know YouTube's guidelines?
Yeah.
Can you guide me through that?
I mean, yeah, we can talk about it all day long. I just can't teach you how to build it.
But can you pull it out and like?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So, can we
yeah,
actually
yeah.
go over that then and talk about what makes this?
So
what makes
first
this perfect
and
gun?
foremost, we're going to make sure that it is in fact clear and safe. So there's no magazine, there's no round inside the chamber. It has visually and physically been inspected. Okay, so we are dealing with a safe firearm. So what we did, and again, like I said, we wanted to make sure that we were building I don't want to not mess up your awesome logo here on the table.
All good.
So what we did is we took the idea of, hey, if I have one rifle to take with me that needs to be able to roughly do everything I need it to do, whether it's closer distance hunting, CQB work, defending my family, whatever it is, defending compound if you make it to a compound or whatever, having that one rifle, right? So this is our DHT 15 E. E stands for enhanced model, okay? It's chambered in 223 Wild, and people often ask, hey, what is 223 Wild? I'm not familiar with that. Basically, if you said you take a 223 Remington and a 5.56 and they had a baby, you would have the 223 Wild. You're getting all the accuracy and projectile offerings of the 223 Remington, but you're also getting the higher chamber pressures and better velocities of that 5.56 cartridge. So we went ahead and we chambered it in 223 Wild. Our barrels are made by our barrel manufacturer up in Montana, McGowan. They make all of our precision barrels, so all of our 308s that we do for law enforcement and for citizens in general, they're all made for precision. So basically, just going, for lack of a better term, we're going tip to butt, right? So starting at the beginning, I am a huge proponent of suppressed weapons. Okay, not always doing it on pistols, depending on the situation. That's a home defense thing that we can talk about at a later date. But if you have a rifle, it's best to have it suppressed. Okay, we are a huge proponent of a company called CGS. CGS Suppressors. It stands for Chaos Group. They're out of New Mexico, Artesia, New Mexico, and they make a phenomenal suppressor. It's a 30 caliber suppressor. It can be used on smaller calibers with the proper muzzle devices, but ultra light, super reliable, maintains the rifle's accuracy. Great company. On the suppressor, we have these wraps. These are our good friends down at Liberty's Defense. They're a company out of Florida. They're run by two current law enforcement officers. Both have former SWAT experience, and this basically is what's called a heat attenuator. What that does is it keeps all the heat from the suppressor maintained inside the wrap. Mm-hmm. So this wrap is made from a special material that it's never going to melt. It's never going to shoot off the front of the gun because it's not secured properly. It's got all these attachments. This wire strap comes around and hooks together with a clasp, so you're never going to shoot this off a gun. So for those that are familiar with shooting suppressed guns with wraps on them, at some point you've experienced shooting your wrap off the gun. The recoil of the gun, naturally over time, that wrap is going to work its way off.
Loosens off, yeah.
This prohibits that, right? So it's always going to be maintained, but it also allows you to, if you had to transition this gun to a different area, or if you laid it across your body or something, you're not going to burn yourself on that suppressor. For precision shooters, the mirage that can come off a hot barrel or a hot suppressor can influence your optics. This kills that mirage. So it's set up more. We took a more of a sniper approach, if you will, or a precision marksman approach with that. Working our way back, we have this setup's not going to be for everybody. Based on my training and experience, this rifle's set up for me, but the basis of the rifle is going to be the same. But We have a laser here with IR capabilities. Based on our previous training and experience, we do have night vision. We work with night vision. So that's something that I'm going to take with me in some capacity, because if you own the night, you own the night, right? For those that don't. So having that ability of having a laser is great. We also have, on this flip side, lighting system independent of the laser. This laser does have a flood IR, which is infrared, which under night vision you could see lit up, just not under the naked eye. This gives us that white light, or that visible. It also has an IR function, so under night vision you could have even more light, not just relying on the laser itself. As we talked about before, our barrels are a heavy contour that adds to the accuracy. You can't really see it because we got this wrap here, which we'll talk about here in a second. But it's a heavy contoured barrel that leads to better accuracy because the barrel is more rigid. So you're not getting as much barrel whip under recoil. And then we also use an adjustable gas block. That's really good for being able to fine-tune the rifle to the particular ammunition you choose and the suppressor you have on the gun. Because a rifle can run one way. As soon as you throw a suppressor on it, you've changed the entire dynamic of the gun. Having an adjustable gas block helps alleviate some of those headaches. It does have a Picatinny rail down here on the bottom, so it is set up to have some type of bipod system. We don't have one attached here right now, but that is something that I would take with me. Based on my training and experience as a police sniper, I like having the ability to be able to have bipods to be able to set up and take a precision shot if I needed to. Working our way back, we have these pressure switches from Mod Light Systems. Great company. Basically, that runs our laser and our white light. And they're just mounted right here to the Picatinny. This is our rail wrap made by the same company, the Liberty's Defense, that makes our suppressor covers. So again, we're just keeping, if we fire this gun a lot, obviously the barrel is going to get hot, the handguard area is going to get hot. We want to protect our hands from that. So we have the rail wrap. Okay. Working our way back, because we do have a sling attached to this rifle. We have our friends from Gray Fighter. It's a police officer in New York that makes these. This is kind of a general purpose wrap. We use it to maintain the sling. So basically, we'll wrap the sling around the rifle if it's not slung across our body, so we can capture that sling so it's not flapping around and catching on stuff. But you can use this as for police officers. They can wrap these around their duty firearm, their holster, and have a tourniquet kind of attached to their holster, and then have this securing that. So that's one of the things that they do with that. But it's really a general purpose wrap, and we'd use it to capture our sling. Working our way back, we'll get to the optic here in a second. But again, this is our DHT-15. We wanted to make sure that everything on the rifle is ambidextrous. So it's set up whether you're a right-handed or left-handed shooter. If you are training with your carbine, and you're not training with your non-dominant side, like everybody has their, if I'm right-handed, I shoot with my right shoulder, right? If you're not training to be able to transition that rifle over to your opposite shoulder and be proficient with it, you're basically being lazy, and you're going to end up hurting yourself should you get in a situation where you have to transition to that other side, whether from injury or the environment around you, right? So we set the rifle up to be completely ambidextrous. So the mag release, the bolt release, the selector switch, everything is ambidextrous, so it'll operate on the left or right-hand side. Same thing with the charging handle. We have an ambidextrous charging handle. This particular rifle, because we are a manufacturer and we are legally able to manufacture these, this does actually have a selector switch, so it does have that third pinhole, that fun switch. So it will shoot, select fire. All right, that's this particular weapon. Obviously, this isn't available to the general public. It would be single fire only, but because this is belongs to the company, we're able to include that feature. It was hidden
when you went like this.
Yeah,
you couldn't even tell it does that.
So with that, we have the Geisley SSA full auto capable trigger, so it's set up to run select fire.
Wow.
working our way back, we have the Law tactical folding system.
Geeking right now, by the way. I'm trying to stay calm, but this is killing me.
We have the Law folder. So basically what this does is you have your overall length of the gun, and then there's a button over here on this other side where you can hit the button and fold that stock over. So now it's making that platform more compact, okay? And that can be good for if you got to shove it into a backpack, or if this is your
turret.
If this is your truck gun, it makes it a little bit more easy to store. All right. So that's the Law folder. Working our way back. Yep. This is the Blue Alpha gear. They call this the stock sock. This is something we're actually T&E in right now. This is a new product that they came out with. Gives you a little bit of a cheek riser here with a little bit of a soft cheek well. Yep. And then it has all these holes on the side to where you can put these bungees in. And really you can store anything. I personally store, I think you can never have enough tourniquets. Because you never know if you're going to have to plug more in one hole or plug holes on you and somebody else. So having more tourniquets on you is a bonus. So we have that set up here. We're running the buffer system is the Voltor A5 system. A little bit longer, but very flat shooting, very easy recoil. It takes a lot of the recoil out. I mean, there's not a whole lot of recoil on an AR-15 to begin with, but it just makes the gun even that more smoother, right? Magpul STR stock. This comes from our time being a law enforcement sniper. As that, I want a good solid cheek weld, so I have a lot of real estate for that. Okay, like I said, on this side, everything is ambidextrous on here. Moving up to the optic, because this is going to be a general purpose rifle, I'm not just going to stick a red dot on it. Even a red dot with some type of magnification flip up sight. I wanted more streamline, be able to take this anywhere. So we went with a low power variable optic, or LPVO, or LVPO, however you want to have it. It's like literally Chevy Ford having that. Everybody knows what you're talking about when you're doing it. But for this particular one, based on my abilities to be able to deliver precision fire at distance, I wanted a little bit higher magnification. You could have a 1:6, a 1:8, or a 1:10 power. So this is a Vortex Razor. So it has the true 1 power. It can go all the way up to a 10 power. So I can really stretch this thing if I need to. I have personally shot this rifle out to 1,000 yards on steel with confirmed hits on steel. So the gun will do the work. I did forget to mention this is a 12.5 inch barrel.
12.5, okay.
12.5. So having that ability to zoom up, not only can you use this for delivering precision fire, you can use it for gathering information. Let's say you're hunkered down in a tree line and you're trying to get an idea of, hey, what's the road ahead look like? Is there a roadblock? Are there people on the road? Dial this sucker up. Now you've got a nice, good, zoomed in view of what's going on in the area. So not just for shooting under magnification, being able to observe under magnification. So that we've got the offset red dot here. So I've got a Holosun mounted on here right now. I went with the solar power because, again,
is this one that you could flip up, or is this one you have to turn the rifle to shoot it?
You do have to turn because it's on that 45.
So it doesn't flip like that to go up to
No, it doesn't. Okay. It doesn't flip. It's mounted at that 45.
So you have to.
Yeah, and this can be another debate among people, whether you mount it on the top, whether you mount it more on the side at a different angle. I personally, the way my body's set up and how I present the rifle, it's easier for me to just roll it this much to where I can pick up that sight. Yeah. Some people, it's harder. Some people, they just don't like that. It's all personal preference. You're building this rifle for you, right? So I choose to do mine on a 45. I went with the Holosun with the solar because, again, we're talking, if this is the last rifle I'm ever going to have on me, I need everything, as minimal batteries as possible, right? Good point. So this is more for up close and personal, even though we do have a true 1-to-power in the optic itself. If I need to do really close snapshots, I have the ability to roll this over. The Vortex bubble level, again, drawing on my sniper experience. If I'm taking long precision shots, I want to make sure that my rifle is 100% level, so I know that round's going to go where it needs to go. Yep. Because as soon as you start canting the rifle, you start dealing with all kinds of mess further downrange. We chose the Faro Concept Sling. They're a great company. But I'm a creature comfort kind of person if I can get away with it. So we have a padded sling here, so you're able to sling the rifle and do whatever you need to do with it. But all intents and purposes, this is our general purpose rifle. We believe that the way we have it designed, this one has a mid-length gas system. So anybody who knows anything about shooting the 12.5-inch AR with a mid-length, traditionally they are very finicky and can be not cycle reliably because of the way the gas system is set up. However, once you throw a suppressor on there, you can now create those pressures inside the gun to make it cycle properly, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we know we're always going to shoot the suppressed. That's why we went with a mid-length on this. We do make this same gun with a carbine length system, which is a proven reliable system for that particular barrel length. So if you don't know if you're going to suppress it or not, we suggest you go with a carbine length. If you know that this gun is always going to be suppressed no matter what, you can bump up to that mid-length, and it's going to run.
Man, that is, sheesh.
Yeah.
You got yourself a butte there.
Yeah. So, like I said, we think we've come up with the ultimate general purpose rifle. The rifle itself, not, kitted out like this, runs you $2,100 for the gun. So it can be for some people that are used to budget guns, it's a little bit of a sticker shock, but when they actually get this on the range, and again, cool thing about our shop, these are available at the shop, so literally you can rent this gun, take it out on the range, shoot it first, and say, hey, yep, that's why it costs $2,100.
Yeah,
so we have that ability at the shop as well.
Dude, very good.
Yeah.
Also at the shop, don't you guys do like industry or not industry, like local business events or things like that?
So we do a small business pop-up every month.
Yeah.
And what that is, again, that whole concept of giving back to the community and helping others, because that's a big thing that I like. The more you give, the more successful you're going to be in life,
100%.
right? So my ability to provide an area where other small businesses can come and set up tables and have people come and see their products was something I was very passionate about. So I think we started in March of this year, February or March, I can't remember exactly when, we started hosting small business pop-ups. And what we do is we take our classroom and we have these giant 8-foot tables that we normally use for our classes, and we set up 6 of them in the classroom, and we reach out to locals, local small business owners, and say, hey, do you want to come in and utilize this table for a vendor event? Basically, like call it a farmer's market, you can call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
We call it the small business pop-up. And we literally have, we have everything from, we have guys who make fancy wooden signs. We've got a lady who makes soaps, like she makes handmade soaps. So if you really look at, and that's one thing, again, that the pandemic people should have really started paying attention to is what your everyday products that you use, what are they made of? And what are they doing to you? What are they doing to your body?
Yeah.
Right? So that was something that I started taking seriously and seeing, I used to use Old Spice Swagger body wash, and then you actually read what's in that crap. It's like, what am I doing?
I heard there's like bad stuff that actually takes away or is bad for testosterone as well, like parabens and things like that.
Yeah, there's that. There's the their deodorant literally has aluminum in it, so you're putting aluminum into your body and coating your body in aluminum.
That's what I've heard. That's
right?
what I've heard, to block the pores, to stop sweating or something like that.
Yeah. So we got a lady that makes handmade soaps. Like she's awesome. We have more of we've got one lady that she specializes in making dog treats, but also dog treats that are CBD and cannabinoid infused for dogs.
Yeah.
We don't allow that to be sold on the premises because we are a federally,
of course.
Marijuana is still federally illegal,
Yeah,
so we can't have that on the premises. But she's able to tell people about the non-CBD and market it. But we've used her products on our drive. I have a 3-year-old German Shepherd that is super high drive, and he is a bear to try to wash.
Yeah.
And we hired a mobile groomer, And I was like, dude, I'm gonna dope my dog up so bad that he can't, because he would fight. We made the mistake of taking him to like a PetSmart once, and they messed him up. So now he gets not happy when it comes to like grooming. So I was like, all right, I gave him
some. Do you work the pup? Like, do you train the pup?
Yeah. So he has gone through obedience training and a little bit of bite work. So
Very
yeah.
cool.
So
because I actually
got
just did
that
an interview like last week.
I saw it. Yep.
Yeah, with leader of the pack.
Yeah.
We're actually getting ready to do another interview now with the bite specialist and talking about bite work and stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, so we got a lady that does that. We got a lady that's been in there that she makes handmade earrings. Yeah. Literally just everything you think of. We have a lady who makes like baked goods. And we've literally had just about everything. At one point we had a great family here locally where they were getting fresh produce from California and Utah, where he would literally drive to the actual farms and buy produce straight from the field. So you talk field to table, that was the epitome of it. You've never tasted such fresh fruit in your life. Oh like we literally stopped shopping for produce because we would only buy their stuff because it was just so fresh. And it would last forever because it's not, coated in insecticides and all that other crap that they do. Unfortunately, he got really sick, so they had to stop that business. So that was unfortunate. But we try to get local food trucks to come out and have like a food truck ability. So the Smokesman, if you're familiar with the Smokesman.
Never heard of the Smokesman.
Okay, he used to set up on like Equestrian and Boulder for a long time. Yeah, he does, smoked everything. Really good food. So he's always, coming around. But we've had other food trucks there. So we just try to have an opportunity where they come, they pay $20 for a table, and half the time I turn around and I spend that $20 at their table anyway. Yeah, so they really don't pay us anything. And just give them a place to sell their stuff. And it's mutually beneficial because people come to the shop. They see the shop, they go to the pop-up, then they come in the shop and maybe they buy stuff, maybe they don't. But, that's not always the point. It's helping these other small business owners that don't have a storefront or can't afford to have a storefront have the ability to still get their products in front of people. So
love that.
Yeah.
Well, dude, this has been one hell of a podcast. I hope we can get you on again.
Oh,
I'm thinking
100%.
2 more podcast episodes at least.
100%.
I want one where we just go super geeky on prepping.
Okay.
And one where we go super geeky on home security, specifically like ideas for home security, cameras, lighting, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Before we close out, is there any final messages you want to say to anybody? I mean, where can people find you? Just close out.
The biggest thing is get training. You can have all the fancy equipment you want, but if you don't train, you're going to be a dead guy with a fancy rifle or a fancy pistol, right? So get the training. Vet who you train with. There's a million people out there that claim to be, gun connoisseurs or trainers or whatever. Vet who you train with. That's very, very important. And then other than that, you can find us. We're on all the social media platforms. Facebook as Dark Horse Tactical. You actually have to type out Dark Horse Tactical LLC because there's actually a Dark Horse Tactical in Kentucky that he makes holsters out of his garage. But he already had that handle, so we had to go Dark Horse Tactical LLC. But on Facebook, we're Dark Horse Tactical. We have a Facebook group called Dark Horse Nation, and that's where we kind of keep. It's Facebook groups, but it's almost like a newsletter where anything that's going on at the shop, sales, training.
Yeah.
We'll throw mindset and preparedness stuff in there every once in a while, but it's for people to be kind of stay connected. So we have that Dark Horse Nation. 702 is our Facebook group. Facebook Dark Horse Tactical. We just started getting back into the Twitter game now that Elon Musk runs Twitter, right? Yeah. We don't do a lot of stuff over on Twitter, but we do that every once in a while. We'll throw some stuff up on TikTok, more educational or eye candy for the gun stuff. Yeah. But that's all our social media handles. We have our website, www.darkhorsetactical702.com, and that has everything available at the shop, the rifles, training, all that stuff through the website. And then our shop is located, if you're here local, Las Vegas or Henderson, it's 2140 South Boulder Highway. So
not even maybe a mile from my barbershop.
Literally at the end of Boulder Highway. Like Boulder Highway stops just past our shop, so we are on the edge of town.
All right, well, with that, man, it's been another episode of Tapered Viking Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Brother, thank you.
Yep.
All
Travis,
right.
appreciate it.
Later, you guys. Sweet.